7. Consciousness doesn't come from the brain. As a student of philosophy and an enthusiast, but layman, of neuroscience, I must be honest here and say that there are many different ideas about consciousness. Many of my viewers will be familiar with the more popular ones, but there are a couple of lesser known ones I think it's interesting to take note of, just for fun. In a 1998 paper published in Analysis, Andy Clark and David Chalmers published an article called The Extended Mind, in which they put forward the thesis that when we use external tools, from notebooks to pocket calculators, that these tools themselves become part of our extended consciousness and should be classified as such. While I am not convinced by their argument, I like the way that they are thinking outside of the box, or brain, if you will. A more recent paper published in Frontiers of Psychology in 2021 by Neil Arhav and Zachariah A. Niemer makes the argument that consciousness is relative. The article explains, in the frame of reference of the cognitive system, it will be observable, first-person perspective, and in the other frame of reference, it will not, third-person perspective. At the time of recording this video, I have yet to fully read and digest this article, but again, it just goes to show how many different ideas about consciousness there are out there. I think when discussing this, there is something very important to note. Within the field of neuroscience, almost all theories of consciousness are rooted in physicalism, and my own interest in the field heavily influences my opinion on this. At the time of writing, my own idea about consciousness is best expressed as an analogy, and that is that the simplest way of understanding how the brain and nervous system is crucial to consciousness, without having to siphon through all the physicalist contending theories and their nuances, is to imagine consciousness as intentional locomotion, as opposed to an object being moved by the wind or other objects acting upon it. While we could use several things that cause locomotion, from a range of vehicles to animals, for the sake of simplicity I'm going to use a car. When a car has all the components in the correct place and is functioning correctly, the result, when the vehicle is activated in normal use, is locomotion. Likewise, when a brain is functioning normally, the result is consciousness. We can extend this analogy to deal with several other things that we may find with consciousness. It sidesteps the problem of qualia, the idea that reductionism cannot explain the feeling of experience because we don't need to connect locomotion to a reductionist breakdown of individual parts of the car. That there is locomotion because of the car is self-evident. And not being able to say locomotion relies on a door, a tyre, or drive shaft, which we cannot do, doesn't change that. The experience of locomotion, just like the experience of consciousness, is a byproduct of the car in working order. This leads us onto another extension of the analogy. When the car is not working correctly, locomotion is either impaired, let's say that it's gone into limp mode, or stops working altogether. Neurological studies are rich with examples of this impairment. Neuroscientist David Eagleman recounts in his book The Brain, The Story of You, the case of Hannah Bosley, who has the condition synesthesia, and as a result has the experience of letters appearing as colours. These small changes in the wiring of the brain demonstrate to Eagleman, who has studied over 6,000 synesthetes in his lab, that internal reality can be measurably different in laboratory conditions. Furthermore, the very way we measure legal death is through the ceasing of brain function, and the way we measure that is through the lack of conscious response. Without overstretching the analogy, this example also accounts for something else we see with the brain. We can stop locomotion without the car being broken or even switched off in the same way that we might not experience consciousness when the brain is in certain states, such as under anaesthetic or in deep sleep. I have spent years investigating different theories of consciousness, both in my own field and those that I am simply enthusiastic about. And I am constantly surprised by how even different fields of study seem to evidence the physical as the source. From biology, let's take the Huxleyan concept of the Umwelt, the sensory range of the different species that are almost alien to our consciousness. For some creatures, consciousness is far more tangibly connected to the physical than for humans. And as I showed in the car analogy, I do not see our not being able to access another creature's Umwelt in itself as being a problem for physicalism. Despite Fameless being a cornerstone via Thomas Nagel's What Is It Like to Be a Bat, of the irreducible subjectivity of consciousness. That we can't reduce consciousness to a particular brain function no more impedes physicalism than not being able to reduce locomotion to a particular part of a car. It is the sum of those parts working in unison that is important, and neuroscientific research has demonstrated that when we impede those physical properties, there is a direct correlation to the impediment of consciousness. Some theists shout consciousness cannot come from the brain, as if it were a war cry. Some even throw in the concept of qualia and the hard problem of consciousness, as if it was a golden bullet. Whatever your field or interest, consciousness is a fascinating subject, but I really do urge people to look at the sum of research rather than just picking a position, whatever that might be, and sticking to it. Whether unusual ideas like the two I cited at the beginning, or entirely different fields of study like the biological Umwelt, I think we can all expand our consciousness when it comes to studying, well, consciousness.